This is Crimson Moon, where every howl holds a secret. I'm Noktula, your storyteller. Tonight's story is a journey through love, power, and the pull of the bond. You're part of the pack now. Let's begin.
Brooke Bennett hunched over her laptop, the glow from the screen throwing soft light across her flat. Outside, snow fell in lazy spirals, frosting the narrow street of red brick houses. The radiators clicked half-heartedly, struggling against the biting December cold. She tugged her oversized jumper tighter, blew on her tea, and typed the headline that would, unbeknownst to her, ruin her life. 10 Reasons to Never Date an Alpha. She smirked at her own dramatic flair and began typing furiously. 1. They think they're always right. 2. Their temper is hotter than your average stovetop. 3. They love control, and not the fun kind. Her fingers flew, snark dripping from every word. A quick glance at her notes reminded her to include a jab at arrogance. She couldn't resist adding. If you want to be treated like an intelligent, independent woman, don't date a man who thinks growling is a valid argument. Perfect, she muttered, hitting save. Still destroying men's lives for a living? Sophie's voice chimed from her phone speaker. Brooke had her on speaker as usual while she worked. Educating, not destroying, Brooke corrected, leaning back in her chair. Think of me as a public service. You're 30, you know. Maybe you should try dating one of these alphas you hate so much before you declare war on them. Pass. I'd rather date my radiator. Brooke glanced at the rusting old heater across the room. At least it only makes noise when it's actually working. Sophie laughed. Fine. But don't call me when your readers start shipping you with some poor alpha just to spite you. Brooke snorted. As if that's ever going to happen. She hit publish. The next morning, Brooke cursed at her stubborn door lock as she wrestled with it. The old wooden door refused to budge in the freezing air, and she gave it a frustrated kick. Careful, love. That door looks like it's winning. She spun around. Leaning lazily against the brick wall opposite was a man. No, scratch that, a walking definition of trouble. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and ridiculously handsome, with dark hair that looked annoyingly perfect despite the snow. A smirk tugged at his mouth as if he lived for moments like this. Do I know you? Brooke asked, narrowing her eyes. Not yet. He pushed off the wall and stepped closer. His accent was warm, Southern English, smooth enough to belong in commercials. Christian Hale. Your new neighbor. Of course. New neighbor. Just her luck. I'd offer to shake hands, Brooke said, finally yanking the door open, but I'm late. Christian's smirk deepened. Don't let me stop you. But for the record, I'm great at fixing stuck locks. Noted, she said flatly, stepping past him. His gaze followed her, amused. Have a good day, Brooke. She froze mid-step. How do you know my name? He tapped his temple with a grin. I'm a neighbor. We pay attention. Her stomach tightened, not from fear, but irritation. She hated men who thought charm was currency. She didn't reply, just walked off, muttering, bloody perfect. Of course he's hot. Behind her, Christian chuckled. That evening, Brooke sat cross-legged on her couch, wine glass in hand, scrolling through the hundreds of comments her new article had attracted. Most were supportive. A few were offended. But one stood out. Alpha male Hale, you forgot reason number 11, we're devastatingly attractive. But thanks for the free PR, love. Her wine nearly spilled. She slammed out a reply before thinking. Brooke _ Bennett, attractive doesn't excuse arrogance. But clearly, you're proving my point. Almost instantly, he replied. Alpha male Hale, maybe. Or maybe you've just never met a good alpha. Brooke stared at the name again. Hale. No. Surely not. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Sophie, Christian Hale. New neighbor. That's him, isn't it? Brooke groaned. This is my nightmare. She typed a quick, sharp reply in the comment thread and slammed her laptop shut, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her flustered. But even as she got ready for bed, she couldn't shake the memory of his smirk, or the way his voice had rolled her name off his tongue like he'd been tasting it. Saturday morning, Brooke ducked into her favorite cafe, brushing snow from her coat. The warm smell of coffee and cinnamon instantly softened her mood. Until she saw him. Christian was seated at a corner table, long legs stretched out, reading something on his phone. She tried to sneak past, but his head lifted immediately, eyes locking on hers. Brooke, he greeted smoothly, standing just enough to make it obvious he had manners, and to draw attention. A couple of girls near the counter glanced his way, whispering. She forced a smile. Christian. Fancy seeing you here. He gestured to the seat across from him. Join me. I'm good. But he didn't move, just raised an eyebrow. Unless you're scared, I'll quote your own article to you in public. She narrowed her eyes. You wouldn't. His grin widened. Sit, and I won't. With an annoyed sigh, Brooke slid into the seat. He leaned forward, chin resting on his hand, completely too pleased with himself. So, reason number 1, we think we're always right. Care to debate? I don't debate with men who call themselves alpha male Hale. He laughed, a low, warm sound that drew a few more curious stares from the other patrons. Fair. But I'm not wrong, am I? Brooke sipped her latte. About being arrogant? No. You're perfect proof of my entire column. Ah, he said, sitting back. Then let me prove you wrong. 1 cup of coffee. 1 real conversation. And if you still think I'm the devil, I'll never bother you again. She eyed him skeptically. You're already bothering me. But you're still sitting here, he countered. Damn him. That evening, the snow fell heavier, blanketing the narrow street. Brooke stood outside her car, shivering, trying to free it from a mound of snow. Her boots slipped as she shoved at it with a shovel. Need a hand, love? She groaned without turning. Go away, Christian. He stepped into view anyway, wearing a thick coat and a smug smile. What are neighbors for, if not to rescue damsels in distress? I'm not a damsel. Then why are you losing to a pile of snow? She glared but kept shoving. I don't need help. He crouched beside her, brushing snow from his gloves. You're stubborn. I like that. I'm not here to be liked. Too late. He took the shovel from her hands before she could protest. Move aside. Within minutes, he'd cleared the worst of it, his movement strong and efficient. Brooke hated how annoyingly attractive that was. Thank you, she muttered grudgingly. Anytime, love. His grin softened slightly, losing some of its teasing edge. Seriously, you should call me if you ever need help. You don't have to do everything alone. Something about the sincerity in his tone made her pause. But before she could respond, he handed back the shovel with a wink. Next time, let me teach you how to dig properly. Unless you enjoy nearly freezing to death. She rolled her eyes, but her lips betrayed her with a tiny smile. The storm worsened by the evening, whipping snow against Brooke's window. She sat cross-legged on her sofa, attempting to focus on editing her next column, but her thoughts kept wandering to Christian, annoyingly smug, frustratingly helpful Christian. Her phone buzzed. Sophie. Hey, Brooke answered. Just checking you're still alive, Sophie said. This storm's nasty. Don't you dare go outside. I'm fine. Editing. Drinking tea. Being responsible. Good. Stay that way. And if the power goes out, text me. Or knock on that hot neighbor's door. Brooke groaned. Not happening. Suit yourself. Don't freeze to death. Sophie hung up. Brooke smiled faintly, setting her phone aside. But moments later, the lights flickered, then went out completely. Perfect, she muttered, grabbing a blanket. The flat grew colder by the second. A knock at her door startled her. She opened it to find Christian standing there, snow clinging to his coat. His expression was softer than usual, though that damned smirk lingered. "Your lights are out," he said. "Brilliant observation, Sherlock. Mine aren't. Come on." He gestured toward his house. "You'll freeze in here." "I'm fine," she lied, pulling her blanket tighter. "Brooke." His tone was different, firm, but not teasing. "It's -3 out here. Stop being stubborn." She stared at him for a long second, then sighed. "Fine." He smiled triumphantly. "Good choice." Christian's house was warm, smelling faintly of cedarwood and something that was undeniably him. Brooke tried not to notice how cozy it felt compared to her freezing flat. "You can take the couch," Christian said, setting down a steaming mug of tea for her. "I've got spare blankets." She settled on the sofa, trying to keep a safe distance. "Thanks. I'll be gone as soon as the power's back." "Of course," he said easily, though amusement glinted in his eyes. "But if you die from hypothermia before then, don't blame me." She rolled her eyes, taking a sip of tea. "You're insufferable." He sat in the armchair across from her, stretching out comfortably. "Yet you're here." They sat in silence for a moment, the crackling of his fireplace filling the space. Brooke tucked her legs under her, pretending to focus on the tea. "Why do you read my columns, anyway?" she asked finally. "Just to annoy me?" Christian smirked. "Partly. But mostly because you're a good writer. Even when you're wrong." She blinked, caught off guard. That almost sounded like a compliment. It was. His gaze lingered on her longer than usual, softer now. The air felt suddenly warmer, heavier. Brooke looked away quickly. "I should sleep," she muttered, curling into the couch. "Good night, Brooke." His voice was lower now, almost gentle. "Good night, Christian." As she drifted off, she swore she felt his gaze on her, and something deep inside her chest hummed in response. The storm had cleared by the weekend, leaving the streets coated in glittering snow. Sophie insisted on dragging Brooke to the local pub that evening. "You've been cooped up for days," Sophie said, linking arms with her as they entered the warm, bustling room. "You need a drink. Maybe even a fling." "I don't need a fling," Brooke protested, unwinding her scarf. Sophie grinned. "Fine. But at least pretend you're having fun." They found a table near the back. Brooke sipped her wine, relaxing slightly, until Sophie's eyes lit up. "Oh, look who's here." Brooke didn't need to turn. She already knew. Christian stood at the bar, chatting easily with the bartender, his laugh carrying across the room. People naturally gravitated toward him, smiling, leaning in to talk. "Of course he's here," Brooke muttered. Christian spotted them instantly, making his way over. "Brooke." "Sophie," he greeted, sliding into the empty seat beside Brooke as if invited. Sophie grinned shamelessly. "Christian. Join us." Brooke shot her a glare, but Sophie only sipped her drink innocently. "So," Christian began, turning to Brooke, "have you written a new list about me yet, or are you still thinking of reasons?" "I don't write about specific people," Brooke said flatly. "Shame. I'd love to know my score." Sophie snickered. Brooke kicked her under the table. The evening passed with Christian staying firmly at their table, making Sophie laugh until tears rolled down her cheeks. Brooke, despite herself, laughed a few times too, though she tried to hide it. When Sophie went to the bar for another round, Christian leaned closer. "You can admit it, you know." "Admit what?" Brooke asked cautiously. That you don't hate me as much as you pretend to. She met his gaze, refusing to back down. Don't get cocky. Too late, he murmured, grinning. Brooke hadn't intended to see Christian again so soon, but fate had other plans. The next morning, she ran into him outside while taking out her rubbish. "Morning, love," he said cheerfully. She folded her arms. "Why are you always around?" "Because I live next door." "Unfortunate coincidence." Christian grinned. "Or the best thing that's ever happened to you." "That's debatable." He stepped closer, smirk fading slightly. "You know, you might actually enjoy yourself if you stopped assuming the worst of me." "I don't assume. I observe." "Right," he said dryly. "And I'm just some arrogant alpha stereotype to you. Aren't you?" His jaw tightened briefly. "If I were, would I have cleared your car out of the snow instead of letting you freeze just to prove a point?" Brooke opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Exactly," he said, voice softer now. "Maybe give me the benefit of the doubt, Brooke." Before she could reply, Lucas strolled up the path. "Morning, big brother," Lucas said cheerfully, giving Brooke a nod. "And this must be the famous Brooke. Christian doesn't shut up about you." Christian shot him a look that promised murder. Brooke raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" Lucas grinned innocently. "All good things, I swear." Brooke gave Christian a smug smile before walking back toward her door. "Good to know, Hale." Christian groaned. A week later, another snowstorm rolled in, and Brooke's cursed heating system finally gave up. Wrapped in 3 layers, she sat at her table, breath misting in the air. A knock on the door made her groan. Christian stood there, hands in his coat pockets. "Your lights are on, but you look like you're about to turn into an icicle." "I'm fine," she said automatically. "You're not." She hesitated, then sighed. "Fine. What do you want?" "To help." He gave her that infuriatingly soft smile again. "Come to my place. I'll make dinner." "I'm not." "Brooke," he interrupted gently. "Stop being stubborn." She stared at him for a long moment, then finally nodded. His grin widened. "Good girl. Don't call me that." He chuckled, stepping aside for her to grab her coat. "Yes, ma'am." They sat in his kitchen later, the smell of roasted vegetables filling the air. Christian moved around with surprising ease, sleeves rolled up, forearms flexing as he stirred a pan. Brooke sat at the counter, pretending not to watch. "You cook," she said finally. "I do many things," he replied without looking at her. "Don't sound so shocked." "I just assumed that I order takeaway every night." "Stereotype much?" She rolled her eyes. "You're insufferable." "And yet, here you are," he said with a grin. Brooke huffed, but she couldn't hide the small smile tugging at her lips. The snow piled higher outside, the wind howling against the windows. Inside, though, it felt warm, cozy even. For the first time in a long time, Brooke didn't feel like running. The snowstorm raged well into the night, making it impossible for Brooke to head back to her flat. Christian, as usual, acted entirely too pleased about the situation. "You can have the couch again," he said, tossing her a folded blanket. "Unless you'd rather I give you my bed." "I'm a gentleman like that." Brooke caught the blanket, glaring. "You're many things, Christian Hale. A gentleman isn't one of them." He smirked. "Fair. But the offer stands." "I'm fine on the couch," she said firmly, settling onto the cushions. Christian lingered in the doorway, watching her with that infuriatingly warm expression. "Do you need anything else? Tea? Hot water bottle? Someone to read you a bedtime story?" Brooke pulled the blanket higher. "I need you to leave so I can sleep." "Bossy." His grin softened into something almost boyish. "Good night, Brooke." Good night, she muttered. He left the room, and the house grew quiet, save for the crackle of the fire downstairs. Brooke tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. At some point, she drifted off, only to wake when she heard soft footsteps returning. Peeking from under her blanket, she caught a glimpse of Christian standing in the doorway, shirtless now, his hair tousled from sleep. "Everything okay?" she asked groggily. He looked almost guilty at being caught. "Just checking you're warm enough." She rolled her eyes, sinking back into the cushions. "I'm fine. Go back to bed." Christian's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Good night, love." When he finally left, Brooke's chest felt oddly tight, and she hated that it had nothing to do with the cold. By Monday morning, Brooke's latest column, "Not all alphas are bad, but most should come with a warning label," was already blowing up online. Her editor, Martha, was thrilled. "This is gold," Martha said over the phone. "Your readers love it when you're feisty. But have you seen the comments? There's a war happening in there." Brooke groaned. "Don't tell me." "Oh, he's back." Martha's tone was gleeful. "Alpha male Hale has practically taken over the thread." Brooke pulled up the site, scanning the newest comments. "Alpha male Hale, a warning label?" "Sure. But some alphas are worth the risk. Hypothetically speaking, of course." Reader 234, date him already. Alpha male Hale, patience. She'll cave eventually. Brooke slammed her laptop shut. A knock on her door made her sigh. She already knew who it was. Christian stood there, coat dusted with snow, grin firmly in place. "You've caused a riot, love," he said by way of greeting. "Half of England thinks we're secretly dating." "We're not," Brooke said flatly. He stepped inside anyway, uninvited as usual. "Maybe we should. Give the people what they want." Christian. "Or," he said, leaning casually against her kitchen counter, "you could stop pretending you don't enjoy this." Brooke folded her arms. "Enjoy what?" "The banter." "Me." She opened her mouth to argue but stopped when his grin turned almost soft. "Dinner tonight," he said suddenly. "No. Come on. One dinner. No strings, no mate bond speeches, just food." Brooke sighed. "Fine. But only because I don't want you commenting on my column again." Christian grinned. "I'll take it." Martha was practically vibrating with excitement when Brooke called later that afternoon. "You're going to dinner with him?" "Perfect. Write about it. Make it a feature, human woman bravely dates an alpha." Brooke groaned. "No. Brooke, come on. It's perfect for the column. People love this storyline. And he's clearly into you." "I'm not writing about Christian," Brooke snapped, though her cheeks heated despite herself. "Fine," Martha said, unconvinced. "But if you change your mind, take notes." Brooke hung up, muttering under her breath, and shoved on her coat. When she met Christian later, he was waiting outside her door, annoyingly handsome in a dark jumper and jeans. "You look nice," he said, smiling. "I'm not doing this for you," she replied. "Of course not. You just coincidentally look amazing tonight." Brooke rolled her eyes, locking her door. "Where are we going?" "Christmas market. Hot chocolate, terrible carol singers, the works." "That's not dinner." He smirked. "You'll live." The Christmas market was crowded, fairy lights glowing in the snow-dusted evening. Brooke walked beside Christian, hands shoved in her pockets, trying not to notice how many people were staring at them. "Relax," Christian murmured. "You look like you're being marched to your execution." "I don't like public attention." "Good thing you're with me, then." "I'll take all of it." "Arrogant," Brooke muttered, but she couldn't stop a small smile when Christian handed her a steaming cup of hot chocolate. "Careful," he said, brushing a bit of whipped cream from her nose with his thumb. His touch lingered just a second too long, and something warm tightened in her chest. They wandered through the stalls, Christian teasing her into trying roasted chestnuts. At one point, he stopped at a game booth. "Win you something?" he asked. "I'm not a child," Brooke said. "Good. Then you'll appreciate it more." He paid for 3 throws, knocking over every tin can with effortless precision. He handed her a ridiculous plush wolf, grinning. Brooke stared at it, torn between exasperation and laughter. "Seriously? Keep it. When you miss me, you can talk to it." "I'm not going to miss you." "Sure you won't," he said smugly. And for the first time, Brooke didn't bother denying that she was smiling. They ended the evening sitting on a bench near the frozen fountain, market lights twinkling around them. Christian leaned back, watching her with that unreadable gaze he sometimes got when he wasn't teasing. "You had fun," he said quietly. Brooke sipped her drink, avoiding his eyes. "It was tolerable." "You laughed," he pressed. "A real laugh. Not one of those polite ones you give everyone else." She sighed, giving in. "Fine. It was nice." Christian's grin softened into something genuine. "Good. I like seeing you smile." The words were simple, but they hit her harder than she wanted to admit. She looked away, pretending to focus on the lights. "You're insufferable," she said weakly. "And yet, you're still here," he replied, leaning slightly closer. Brooke felt her pulse jump. She stood quickly, breaking the moment. "We should head back." Christian stood too, hands in his pockets, but his expression was still warm. "Whatever you say, love," he said, falling into step beside her as snow drifted around them. And for once, Brooke didn't mind the silence that followed. The town's winter festival lit up the high street with strings of golden lights, paper lanterns swaying gently in the breeze. Brooke had planned to avoid it, but Sophie insisted, tugging her through the crowd. "You need to get out," Sophie said. "And maybe accidentally run into Christian." "I'm not here for Christian," Brooke muttered. "Sure you're not," Sophie said, clearly unconvinced. As if summoned, Christian appeared near the food stalls, chatting with Lucas. He caught sight of Brooke instantly, his face breaking into a grin. "Brooke," he said smoothly, striding over. "You look beautiful." She scowled, but heat crept up her neck. "Don't start." Lucas raised an eyebrow at her, clearly amused. "Evening, Brooke. Enjoying the festival?" "It's fine," she said shortly. Before she could escape, the sound of soft music floated through the air as a live band began to play. Couples moved into the open space between the stalls, swaying to the slow, warm tune. Christian held out a hand. "Dance with me." "No." "Come on," he said, his tone softer than usual. "Just one dance." Brooke hesitated, then sighed, slipping her hand into his. Christian pulled her gently into the makeshift dance floor, his hand settling on her waist. Brooke stiffened, but the warmth of his palm seeped through her coat, sending a strange thrill through her chest. "You're tense," Christian murmured. "Because you're making me do this," she said. "Maybe you like it more than you want to admit." His voice was low, teasing, but not mocking. She looked up at him despite herself, their faces closer than she intended. His expression was softer than usual, eyes warm, as if he wasn't teasing at all. Brooke's breath caught, and she quickly looked away. When the song ended, she stepped back abruptly. "That's enough." Christian released her hand but didn't look upset, only thoughtful, almost as if he'd learned something she hadn't meant to show. The next morning, Brooke regretted agreeing to meet Sophie for coffee in town, especially when she spotted Danny, her ex, sitting at a nearby table. "Brooke," Sophie hissed, following her gaze. "Don't panic." "I'm not panicking," Brooke lied. Danny noticed her instantly and stood, smiling the same smile that had once made her heart flip. "Brooke." It's been ages. She forced a polite smile. Danny. Hi. Still writing those articles? He asked, his tone light but edged with condescension. I read one the other day, about alphas. Clever, but a bit harsh, don't you think? Before Brooke could respond, a familiar voice interrupted. Danny, right? Christian appeared at her side, sliding an arm casually around her waist as if he belonged there. His smile was pleasant, but his tone held an undercurrent of steel. Christian Hale, Danny said, looking him over. And you are? Brooke's neighbor, Christian said smoothly. And friend. Danny's smile tightened. Right. Christian's grip on Brooke's waist stayed firm, almost protective. You were saying something about her articles. Danny shrugged. Just that they're entertaining. Entertaining, Christian repeated, his tone flat. I think they're brilliant. Danny glanced between them, clearly irritated, before forcing a smile. Well, good to see you, Brooke. He left quickly, and Brooke stepped back from Christian, pulling free of his arm. You didn't need to do that. He was being smug, Christian said simply. I can handle smug. Maybe, Christian said, looking down at her, but you shouldn't have to. Brooke didn't reply, too unsettled by how genuine he looked when he said it. Later that evening, Brooke sat in her flat, still unsettled by the morning's encounter. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Christian stood there, hands in his pockets. Checking in, he said. You seemed off earlier. I'm fine, Brooke said quickly. He studied her for a moment. Danny used to be your boyfriend, didn't he? She frowned. How do you know that? Lucky guess, Christian said. You got that look, like you were bracing for a hit that never came. Brooke crossed her arms. You're reading too much into things. Maybe, Christian said softly, but I don't like the way he looked at you. Like you were still his to criticize. Brooke blinked, caught off guard. Christian's expression softened. You deserve better than that. You deserve someone who sees you for exactly who you are and doesn't make you feel like you need to explain yourself. Her heart did an unwelcome flip. You talk like you know me that well. I'm getting there, he said quietly. Brooke swallowed, suddenly very aware of how close he was standing. She stepped back quickly. I need to finish my work. Christian nodded, though his gaze lingered for a moment longer before he turned to leave. Good night, Brooke. She closed the door, leaning against it for a moment, trying to steady her breathing. The following afternoon, Brooke was walking home from the cafe when Lucas fell into step beside her, hands shoved in his coat pockets. Lucas, she said, surprised. What are you doing here? Just checking on you, he said casually. Christian's been distracted lately. Distracted? Lucas smirked. You. Obviously. Brooke sighed. Lucas. Look, I know you're cautious. You've got your reasons. But Christian's not like most alphas. He's different. Everyone says that about someone they like. Lucas chuckled. True. But Christian's been waiting his whole life for someone like you, whether he realizes it or not. So maybe don't write him off so quickly. Brooke frowned. You sound very sure of yourself. Beta intuition, Lucas said with a grin. Think about it, yeah. Before she could reply, he tipped his head in farewell and walked off, leaving her more conflicted than ever. That evening, Brooke was sitting at her kitchen table, editing her next column, when a knock sounded. Christian stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Can we talk? He asked. Brooke hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside to let him in. Christian moved to stand near the counter, arms folded. Why are you avoiding me? I'm not avoiding you, she said quickly. You are, Christian said, his voice steady. You laugh with me, you dance with me, and then you pull away like I've done something wrong. Brooke bit her lip, unsure how to respond. Christian stepped closer, his voice quieter now. If you don't like me, tell me. I can take it. But if you do, stop running every time it feels real. Brooke's heart raced. Christian, this is complicated. It doesn't have to be, he said gently. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the air between them heavy. Brooke opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Finally, Christian sighed, stepping back. I'll let you think about it. He left quietly, leaving Brooke standing in her kitchen, heart pounding as the snow outside fell heavier, blanketing the street in silence. The next day, Brooke answered the knock on her door already suspecting who it was. Christian stood there, holding a bag of groceries, looking infuriatingly casual. What are you doing? She asked suspiciously. Cooking. For you, he said, brushing past her as if invited. You like pasta, right? I didn't say you could come in. Didn't say you couldn't either, Christian replied, setting the bag on her counter. Consider this me bribing you into forgiving me for being too honest last night. Brooke folded her arms. I'm not mad at you. Good. Then you can help me. He handed her a chopping board and knife. I'm busy, she protested. Busy glaring at me? His grin softened slightly. Come on, Brooke. Just help me. You might even have fun. Against her better judgment, she gave in, washing her hands and joining him at the counter. Within minutes, her kitchen looked like a disaster zone. Christian moved confidently, tossing ingredients into a pan, while Brooke chopped vegetables, until he reached around her to grab the olive oil, his arm brushing against hers. She froze. Relax, he said, his voice low near her ear. I'm not going to bite. Brooke glared at him, but her cheeks warmed anyway. You're enjoying this? Absolutely. His grin widened. When she turned to put the chopped vegetables into the pan, her elbow accidentally bumped his arm, knocking the spoon he was holding. Sauce splattered across his jumper. Brilliant, he said, looking down at himself. Brooke bit back a laugh. Maybe you're not as perfect at cooking as you think. Careful, love, he said, smiling despite himself. You're dangerously close to admitting you're having fun. I'm not, she lied. Christian just smirked and went back to cooking. The snow outside had stopped by the time they finished eating. Brooke stood at the window, sipping her tea, while Christian cleared the dishes. Want to go for a walk? He asked suddenly. It's freezing. You live in England, love. It's always freezing. Come on. He held out her coat. She sighed but allowed herself to be dragged outside. The street glittered under the fresh snow, fairy lights glowing from nearby houses. As they walked, Christian bent to scoop up a handful of snow. Brooke narrowed her eyes immediately. Don't even think about it. He grinned, tossing the snowball from hand to hand. Too late. Before she could react, the snowball hit her coat. Brooke gasped, bending to scoop her own handful. You're dead, Hale. They launched into an impromptu snowball fight, darting around parked cars, laughing breathlessly. Brooke managed to hit him square in the chest, and he retaliated by catching her around the waist, spinning her in a circle as she squealed. Cheater, she shouted, laughing. Winner, he corrected, setting her down gently. They stood close, their breaths clouding in the cold air. Brooke suddenly became aware of how close his hands were to her waist, how his grin softened as he looked at her. Her laughter faded, replaced by something heavier in the quiet that followed. Christian's gaze dropped to her lips briefly before he stepped back, clearing his throat. You're better at this than I expected. Brooke quickly scooped another snowball and threw it at his shoulder to break the tension. Shut up. He just laughed. Later that evening, Brooke returned to her flat, cheeks still pink from the cold and laughter. She was about to settle on the sofa when another knock came. Christian stood there, hair damp as if he'd just showered, holding her scarf. "You left this," he said. "Thanks," she said, taking it from him. He didn't move immediately, lingering in the doorway. "Can I come in?" Brooke hesitated, then nodded. Christian stepped inside, looking around with a faint smile. "Your place feels like you. Cozy. A bit stubborn, but warm." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you comparing me to my furniture?" "Maybe," he said, smiling slightly. "You look good when you're happy, you know. Like earlier." Brooke felt her pulse quicken. It was just a snowball fight. "Still," he said softly. The silence stretched, heavy but not uncomfortable. Christian stepped closer, his expression unreadable now, more serious than she'd ever seen it. "Brooke," he said quietly, "if I kissed you right now, would you hate me for it?" Her breath caught. She opened her mouth, unsure what she meant to say, but at that exact moment, her phone buzzed loudly on the table, making them both jump. Brooke grabbed it quickly, using it as an excuse to look away. "I should get that." Christian nodded, stepping back. "Right. Another time, then." He left with a soft, "Good night, love," leaving Brooke staring at her phone, heart pounding. The next morning, Sophie showed up at Brooke's flat, shaking snow from her boots. "You've been suspiciously quiet," Sophie said, narrowing her eyes. "Spill." "Nothing happened," Brooke said too quickly. Sophie gasped. "You almost kissed, didn't you?" Brooke groaned, sinking onto the sofa. "It was close." "And you didn't kiss him because—" "Because it's Christian," Brooke said. "Because he's an alpha. Because this is stupid." Sophie folded her arms. "You like him?" Brooke didn't reply. Sophie smirked. "You're falling for him." "I'm not," Brooke insisted, though her cheeks heated. "Sure you're not," Sophie said, sitting beside her. "Look, I get it. But maybe stop punishing him for being who he is. He's clearly mad about you." Brooke frowned. "He doesn't seem mad about me. He shows up for you in snowstorms, cooks for you, and basically worships the ground you walk on," Sophie said. "If that's not mad about you, I don't know what is." Brooke didn't answer, staring at her hands instead. That evening, Brooke was typing at her laptop when a knock came. She opened the door to find Lucas standing there this time, looking apologetic. "Sorry for dropping by," Lucas said. "Can we talk?" Brooke stepped aside, confused. "Is something wrong?" Lucas sat at her table, rubbing the back of his neck. "Not wrong, exactly. But Christian's struggling." "Struggling?" Brooke asked, alarmed. Lucas nodded. "He's trying so hard not to push you. But it's driving him mad. He's not used to feeling like this about someone." Brooke's chest tightened. "He shouldn't feel like this. I've been clear." "Have you?" Lucas asked gently. "Because from where I'm standing, you feel the same. You're just scared." Brooke frowned, unsure what to say. Lucas smiled faintly, standing. "He's a good man, Brooke. And he's not going to wait forever. Think about what you really want." He left quietly, leaving Brooke sitting in her silent flat, staring at the door, her heart twisting with something she didn't want to name. Brooke had been avoiding Christian for 2 days. Not intentionally, at least that's what she told herself, but she'd kept busy writing, running errands, and staying indoors when she saw him outside. But Christian noticed. Of course he did. When she finally stepped out to take her rubbish to the bins, he appeared at the gate, leaning casually against the post as if he'd been waiting. "Finally," he said. "I was starting to think you'd moved." "I've been busy," Brooke replied, adjusting the bin lid. "Right." His tone was easy, but his gaze was sharp. "Too busy to say hello?" Brooke exhaled. "Christian." He stepped closer, his usual teasing smirk replaced with something steadier. If you need space, tell me. But don't hide from me, Brooke. I don't play games. She swallowed, meeting his gaze. I'm not hiding. Good. His expression softened. Because I'm not going anywhere. Brooke opened her mouth to reply, but Christian smiled suddenly, leaning back. Come for a walk with me. 10 minutes. No excuses. She hesitated, then sighed. Fine. They walked down the snow-dusted path toward the park, the winter sun low in the sky. Christian shoved his hands in his pockets, glancing at her. You've been writing, he said. Another column about me? Brooke smirked faintly. No. You haven't annoyed me enough this week. Give me time. His grin softened as he looked at her. But you're smiling again. That's progress. Brooke looked away quickly, pretending to study the trees. The next afternoon, Brooke stopped by the cafe for coffee, only to find Danny waiting outside. Brooke, he said, smiling as if their last meeting hadn't been awkward. Got a minute? Brooke hesitated. What do you want, Danny? Just to talk. Maybe catch up. I've missed you. She frowned. Danny. Look, I messed up, Danny said quickly. I should have fought harder for us. Can we try again? Before Brooke could respond, a familiar voice cut in. She's not interested. Christian stood a few feet away, his tone calm but unmistakably firm. Danny's smile faded. This doesn't concern you. It does, Christian said evenly, stepping closer. She said no. Respect that. Brooke touched Christian's arm quickly. It's fine. I can handle this. Christian's jaw tightened, but he nodded, stepping back slightly. Danny looked between them, his expression souring. So it's true then. You and him. It's none of your business, Brooke said firmly. Goodbye, Danny. Danny stared at her for a moment before leaving, muttering under his breath. Brooke turned to Christian, sighing. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Christian said quietly. He doesn't get to talk to you like you owe him anything. Brooke blinked, taken aback by the softness in his tone. Thank you. Christian's expression eased, though his shoulders stayed tense. Anytime. Later that evening, Brooke sat in her flat, sipping tea, when another knock sounded. Christian stood there again, hair damp from the snow, looking almost hesitant for once. Can I come in? He asked. Brooke stepped aside, and he moved to stand near her window, glancing out at the snow before turning back to her. I'm sorry if I overstepped today, he said. I don't like seeing anyone make you feel small. You didn't overstep, Brooke said quietly. He studied her for a moment. Good. Because I'm not going to apologize for caring about you. Brooke's breath caught. Christian. He stepped closer, his gaze steady now. You can keep pretending this is nothing. But we both know it's not. Brooke's heart raced. I didn't say. You don't have to, Christian said softly. I can feel it, Brooke. Every time you laugh with me, every time you look at me like you don't mean to. Brooke stared at him, her words stuck in her throat. Finally, she looked away. This is complicated. Christian's expression softened. It doesn't have to be. When she didn't answer, he sighed, stepping back. I'll wait. But not forever. He left quietly, leaving Brooke standing in the middle of her flat, pulse still hammering. The next morning, Brooke spotted Lucas outside, chatting with Sophie, who looked far too amused for her liking. Lucas smiled when he saw Brooke. Morning. Brooke raised an eyebrow. What are you two plotting? Nothing, Sophie said innocently. Just discussing how stubborn you are. Brooke groaned. Not you two. Lucas grinned. I'll keep it simple. Christian's serious about you. He's not playing games. I know, Brooke said, softer than she intended. Good. Because if you're going to push him away, do it now. He won't say it, but this is different for him. You matter more than you think. Brooke frowned. Why are you telling me this? Lucas's grin softened. Because you're good for him. And because he deserves to be happy, and so do you. Before Brooke could reply, Sophie smirked. Translation, stop being a coward. Brooke rolled her eyes but said nothing. That evening, Brooke found herself standing at Christian's door, heart pounding. She almost turned back, but before she could knock, the door opened. Christian stood there, surprised. Brooke? I didn't plan this, she said quickly. But I can't stop thinking about you. And it's annoying. And confusing. But. Christian stepped closer, his expression unreadable now. But. Brooke swallowed hard. But I don't want to keep pretending I don't feel this. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Christian reached up, cupping her cheek gently. Tell me to stop, and I will. Brooke didn't move. Christian leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Brooke didn't. When his lips finally met hers, the kiss was warm, slow, and impossibly soft, like he'd been waiting his whole life for it. When they finally pulled back, Brooke's breath was uneven. Better than a snowball fight? Christian murmured. Brooke managed a small smile. Maybe. Christian's grin softened, his forehead resting against hers. Good. Because I'm not letting you hide from me again. Brooke didn't argue this time. The next morning, Brooke woke to a soft knock on her door. Still half asleep, she opened it to find Christian holding a takeaway bag and 2 coffee cups. You didn't eat dinner last night, he said by way of greeting. Breakfast? Brooke blinked, still in her jumper from the night before. You could have called. Would you have said yes? She sighed. Probably not. Exactly, Christian said, stepping inside. So I didn't give you the option. Brooke rolled her eyes but let him in. They sat at her small table, eating pastries and drinking coffee. For once, Christian wasn't teasing. He just watched her quietly between bites, his expression softer than usual. Finally, Brooke set down her cup. You're being suspiciously quiet. I'm enjoying this, he said simply. You. Me. Breakfast. Feels right. Brooke looked away quickly, her chest tightening in a way that felt dangerous. 2 days later, Christian convinced her to go back to the winter market with him. This time, it wasn't an accident, it was a date. He walked beside her, their hands brushing occasionally as they browsed stalls. At one point, he slipped his fingers through hers, testing her reaction. Brooke glanced at him, but she didn't pull away. You didn't run, Christian said, smiling faintly. I didn't say you could hold my hand. True, he said, squeezing gently, but you're letting me. They stopped at a booth selling handmade ornaments. Christian picked one up, a small carved wolf. Too obvious, he asked. Brooke smirked. A bit. He bought it anyway, handing it to her. For your tree. A reminder of me when I'm not around to annoy you. Assuming I even put up a tree. You will, he said confidently. I'll help. Brooke shook her head, but she didn't refuse. When Brooke left the market later that afternoon, Danny was waiting near the entrance. Brooke, he said quickly, stepping in front of her. We need to talk. Danny. I made a mistake, he said, his voice low. You can't be serious about him. He's an alpha. You've written entire columns about how bad this is. Brooke's jaw tightened. This isn't your business. I still care about you, Danny pressed. And I don't want to see you get hurt. Before Brooke could respond, Christian appeared at her side, his expression calm but his stance tense. She said it's not your business, Christian said evenly. Danny's gaze hardened. You'll hurt her. It's what alphas do. Christian didn't rise to the bait. His voice stayed quiet, controlled. You don't know me. But she does. And she gets to decide for herself. Danny looked at Brooke, waiting for her to speak. Brooke squared her shoulders. I've made my choice, Danny. Please leave. Danny stared at her for a moment before finally walking away, muttering something under his breath. Christian glanced at Brooke. You okay? Brooke exhaled. I'm fine. Christian studied her for a moment, then nodded. Good. Because I'd hate to have to break his nose. Brooke almost laughed despite herself. That evening, Brooke sat on her sofa, the carved wolf ornament in her hand. She didn't notice Christian step inside until he spoke. You're thinking too much, he said, sitting beside her. I didn't say you could come in. You left the door unlocked. Consider that an invitation. Brooke shook her head, setting the ornament on the table. You're insufferable. Christian didn't argue. Instead, he watched her closely. Does it scare you? How this feels? Brooke looked at him sharply. No. Liar, Christian said softly. She wanted to deny it, but her heart was beating faster under his gaze. Something shifted in the air between them. She felt it, something warm, almost electric, curling through her chest when he looked at her. Christian's eyes softened, and his voice dropped. You feel it too, don't you? Brooke swallowed. Feel what? This. He gestured between them. The pull. Like it's always been there, waiting. Brooke looked away quickly, unwilling to answer. Christian leaned back, giving her space, but his expression stayed warm, patient. You don't have to say it yet. But it's real, Brooke. You can't deny that forever. 2 nights later, Brooke agreed, reluctantly, to dinner at Christian's place. He cooked again, this time without the chaos, and they ate by the fire in his living room, the snow falling heavily outside. After dinner, they sat on the sofa, a comfortable silence between them as the fire crackled. Christian watched her for a long moment before speaking. Tell me to stop if this is too much. Brooke looked at him, her chest tight. Christian. But she didn't finish, because he leaned in and kissed her. This kiss wasn't careful like the first, it was deeper, warmer, his hands sliding gently to the back of her neck as if he couldn't help himself. Brooke's fingers curled into his jumper, pulling him closer before she even thought about it. When they finally broke apart, Christian rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. I'm not going to pretend anymore, he said quietly. I'm yours if you want me. Brooke didn't pull away. Her voice was soft, but steady. I think I do. Christian's smile was slow, genuine, and entirely unguarded. Good. Because I'm not letting you change your mind. Brooke almost laughed, shaking her head, but she didn't move from his arms. For the first time, it felt frighteningly easy to stay there. The next morning, Brooke woke up to sunlight streaming through Christian's windows. She blinked, momentarily disoriented, then remembered, dinner, firelight, kissing, and falling asleep curled against him. Christian was in the kitchen when she padded in, wearing a plain gray t-shirt and holding 2 mugs of coffee. You stayed, he said softly, handing her one. Brooke accepted it, her cheeks warming. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I didn't mean to let you, Christian said, smiling faintly. But you looked peaceful. And I liked having you here. Brooke sat on a stool, watching him. You're being disgustingly sweet this morning. Don't get used to it. He smirked, but his gaze softened. Actually, do get used to it. Brooke's heart did an unwelcome flip, and she looked down at her coffee. Christian watched her for a moment. You can run back to your flat if you want. But I hope you don't. Brooke looked up, meeting his eyes. I'm not running. His smile widened slowly. Good. Because I'd catch you. Later that day, Brooke sat with Sophie at their usual cafe table. Sophie, predictably, was grinning like she already knew everything. So, Sophie said, stirring her tea. You and Christian finally stopped pretending, huh? Brooke sighed. You're unbearable. I'm right, Sophie corrected. And you're happy. Don't even try to deny it. Brooke hesitated. It's different. Being with him feels, she searched for words. Safe. Sophie offered. Not exactly, Brooke said. It's more. Like I'm always aware of him, even when he's not there. Which is terrifying. Sophie's grin softened. You like him. And he clearly adores you. Stop overthinking it. Brooke glanced out the window, thoughtful. You think I can trust this? Sophie reached over, squeezing her hand. I know you can. That evening, Brooke sat at her desk, editing her next column, when she felt it, a strange, restless tug in her chest, almost like an instinct. She frowned, glancing at the clock. She hadn't spoken to Christian since breakfast, but now, she needed to. Frustrated with herself, she grabbed her coat and walked to his house. Christian opened the door almost instantly, as if he'd been expecting her. You felt it too, didn't you? He asked quietly. Brooke blinked. Felt what? That pull, Christian said, stepping closer. The way your chest tightens when we're apart too long. It's the bond. Brooke's heart raced. You're saying we're fated, Christian said simply. Brooke took a step back, shaking her head. No. That's not, Christian, I've written entire columns about why this doesn't work. Christian's gaze softened. Maybe you were wrong. Brooke swallowed hard, torn between running and staying. Christian didn't push. He just said quietly, you don't have to call it anything yet. Just, don't deny what you feel. The next day, Brooke bumped into Danny outside the bookstore. He looked calmer than before, almost resigned. Brooke, he said, stopping her. Wait. I just want to say something. She hesitated but nodded. I was angry, Danny said. And I said things I shouldn't have. But I do hope you're happy. Even if it's with him. Brooke blinked, surprised. Thank you. Danny gave a faint smile. He's not what I pictured for you. But maybe that's good. Brooke studied him for a moment. Take care of yourself, Danny. He nodded once before walking away, leaving her strangely relieved. That evening, Brooke sat in her flat, staring at the wolf ornament on her table. She thought about Danny's words, about Sophie's grin, about the strange bond tugging at her chest whenever Christian wasn't near. Before she could talk herself out of it, she grabbed her coat and went to Christian's house. He opened the door, looking surprised. Brooke? She stepped inside before he could say more. I'm tired of fighting this, she said quickly. I don't know if I believe in fate or bonds or any of it. But I believe in you. Christian's expression softened, his voice low. Say that again. I believe in you, Brooke repeated, steadier now. Christian's grin spread slowly, his relief obvious. Good. Because I've been waiting for you to say that. Brooke stepped closer, sliding her hands into his jumper. So, are you going to kiss me, or are you going to stand there smiling all night? Christian laughed softly, leaning down to kiss her, this time with no hesitation, no carefulness, just all the pent-up warmth between them spilling out. When they finally pulled back, Christian rested his forehead against hers. You're mine now, love. And I'm yours. Brooke didn't argue this time. Looks like it. And for the first time, it didn't feel terrifying at all. Brooke sat at her laptop, fingers hovering over the keys. Her editor had asked for a new dating column by the end of the week, and for once, she didn't know how to start. Sophie sat across from her, sipping tea and watching her struggle. "You look like you're writing a confession to the Queen," Sophie said. "I'm writing a confession to thousands of readers," Brooke muttered. "Same difference. What's the problem?" "I've built my entire career on telling women to avoid alphas," Brooke said. "And now I'm dating one." Sophie grinned. "Then maybe write about how wrong you were." Brooke frowned. "I wasn't wrong. Some alphas are toxic. And some aren't," Sophie said pointedly. "Write about that. Tell them what you've learned." Brooke sighed, glancing at her blank document. "This is going to be a disaster." Sophie smirked. "Or it's going to be brilliant. And Christian's going to love it." Brooke tried to hide her smile but failed. 3 days later, Brooke stood outside the community center where the winter market had set up for its final weekend. Christian had texted her to meet him there, but he hadn't said why. When she arrived, she found Lucas grinning near the entrance. "He's inside," Lucas said, looking far too pleased with himself. Brooke frowned suspiciously but stepped in. Inside, fairy lights draped across the ceiling, and a small crowd gathered near a raised platform. Christian stood there, looking both smug and slightly nervous. When he spotted her, he smiled. "Brooke. Just in time." "What are you doing?" she asked warily. "Something you'll probably call ridiculous," Christian said, then turned to the small crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, this will only take a minute." Brooke froze as all eyes turned to him. Christian stepped closer, his voice warm but steady. "This incredible woman writes columns about how not to date men like me. But lucky for me, she broke her own rule. And I've never been happier about anything in my life." The crowd laughed softly, and Brooke felt her face heat. Christian smiled at her, softer now, his words only for her. "I'm mad about you, Brooke. You're stubborn, infuriating, brilliant, and I love you." The room seemed to go quiet. Brooke's breath caught. "You love me?" "Completely," Christian said simply. For once, Brooke didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, grabbed his jumper, and kissed him. The crowd cheered, but she barely noticed. When they finally pulled back, Christian grinned. "So, was that a yes?" Brooke laughed breathlessly. "That was a very big yes." The next morning, Brooke sat at Sophie's kitchen table, recounting the entire thing while Sophie practically vibrated with excitement. "He said it in public?" Sophie gasped. Christian Hale, the private, brooding alpha, made a grand romantic gesture. "Yes," Brooke said, unable to stop smiling. "And you kissed him in front of everyone?" "Yes." Sophie grinned like a cat. "You're glowing, by the way. It's disgusting." "I love it." Brooke rolled her eyes, but her smile didn't fade. Lucas popped his head through the doorway. "Told you he'd do something big." Brooke looked at him. "You knew?" "Of course I knew," Lucas said. "Christian doesn't do anything halfway." Brooke shook her head but couldn't help laughing. 2 days later, Brooke's new column went live. "When You're Wrong, and It's Wonderful." By Brooke Wren. "I've spent years warning women to stay away from alphas, strong, dominant men who seem to think the world bends to them. I still believe many of those warnings are valid. But sometimes, you meet someone who rewrites every rule you've ever made. Sometimes, he's patient when you push him away. Sometimes, he respects every boundary, even when it kills him not to cross it. Sometimes, he makes you laugh when you least want to, and sometimes he loves you so openly you stop being afraid. So here's my update: avoid toxic men. But if you find one who loves you like that, maybe break your own rules." Brooke. Sophie sent her a text minutes after it posted, "You're disgusting." "I love it." Christian sent her one too. I like this writer. You should keep him. Brooke smiled at her screen for a long time. Snow fell softly on Christmas Eve as Brooke sat curled on Christian's sofa, wearing one of his jumpers and holding hot chocolate. The carved wolf ornament hung proudly on his tree. Christian sat beside her, one arm draped lazily over her shoulders. You realize you're basically living here now, right? Brooke smirked. Maybe I just like your heating. Right, Christian said dryly, kissing the top of her head. Definitely not me. Brooke snuggled closer, pretending to sigh. You're tolerable, I suppose. Liar, Christian murmured, smiling against her hair. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling. Finally, Brooke tilted her head to look at him. I love you, too, you know. Christian's expression softened instantly. Say it again. Brooke rolled her eyes but smiled. I love you. Christian kissed her, slower this time, almost reverent. When they pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. Merry Christmas, love. Brooke smiled, her heart full. Merry Christmas, Christian. And for the first time in years, Brooke Wren wasn't thinking about rules or columns or avoiding anything. She was exactly where she wanted to be.